All right. Jared Lajani here today with Jeff Tauzin with Main Street Mogul. Super excited to get to do this. Jeff, of course, for those of you that don't know, is the guy that grew Doug's from what I believe when he took it over. And I'll let him tell his story, but I think it might have been maybe a $500,000 company. And I think he grew it to, Jeff,
7.1 million.
7.1 million. And he did that the Hard Knocks way. And so I'll kind of just let him tell his story a little bit. Just kind of what inspired you, Jeff, to get into HVAC and plumbing business, and how did Douglas get it started? Kind of tell me, because I know you had some other opportunities and some other directions you could have went.
Well, it's kind of funny. I don't know if I was really inspired to get in the industry. More so, I was born into the industry because technically I'm a third generation. So,
wow.
If you're familiar with Nick's Refrigeration in Thibodeau, my grandpa and my uncle Gerald that started A&G. So my grandpa.
So you're a legacy guy.
Yeah, my paternal grandpa started Tauzin air conditioning and refrigeration, and then obviously my uncle Gerald, actually my paternal.
So you're a check bay guy.
Yeah, I started.
Yeah, me too. So two check bay guys. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, grew up in check bay, and then so they started A&G. So I was just around the business my whole life, and then my dad obviously worked for his dad, and then they had a falling out around the early 80s, like when the 80s oil bust went down. So
family business is hard, isn't it?
My dad was unemployed, and he ended up going to work for Cameco for 5 years in the maintenance department, which, obviously later they became John Deere. And while he was there, he actually started his own company. So he actually initially started the company, operated as a sole proprietor for years. And, just because what happened with him and his dad, and they never reconciled their relationship in 30 years. So my grandpa died, and they never reconciled. And that always kind of kept me like, I didn't want to work with them.
I'm from Check Bay, so I'm actually very familiar with the reputation.
Yeah.
And just from my perspective, what I can say is they had a great reputation, but it seems like they never really, I don't want to say operated like a real business. I know it was a real business, but they kind of kept that home, mom and pops. They never really, got into the marketing and the scaling. It seems like that never really happened until you kind of got.
Yeah,
and this is my perspective, just kind of because I'm familiar. Is that kind of how it happened?
Yeah. So my dad started the company roughly, we always say in 1988. It goes back probably 1986. Kind of operated as a sole proprietor. Either I worked part time with him or one of my friends from high school, and it just kind of went back and forth like that for years. And then I decided I didn't want to work for him, so I decided to, I'm gonna go to college. Went for mechanical engineering. I first started pre-engineering, then I left, went to University of Lafayette in mechanical engineering. Stayed there for about 3 semesters.
So let me ask you, Jeff, in going to college, you were not going to college knowing for sure that you were going to go back and do the AC thing?
No, I didn't know what I wanted to do. To be honest with you, I was going to college to... I always liked education, but I was going to college because I didn't want to go to work, to be honest with you.
Okay, makes sense.
So did 3 semesters at University of Louisiana. I did well because at that time I was kind of done with the planning. But I got broke. Of course, I met a friend that had a dirt bike track behind his house. And then I was like, well, I want to get back into dirt bikes. Yeah. So moved back home, went and worked for my dad part-time, and then went back to Nichols and changed my major to math. And just kind of, did my thing. Kind of went, I don't think I ever went back full-time at Nichols other than maybe 1 semester. And kind of went to Nichols, and I got tired of hearing that, you can make 40 grand when you get out of school as an engineer. And
today you make so much more money going into the trades than you ever do going to college. I think college is pretty much is dying.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I just remember thinking, I'm making $30,000 a year working part-time with my dad. And of course over the summer I worked a lot of hours, but so just kind of working all aspects of the business. And
so you came out of college.
Yeah. So what happened? I literally went to college, scheduled to go part-time. Went to college at Nichols one day. I was in class with a bunch of 18, 19 years old, in like physics class. And, they all talking about what they did on the weekend. And I I walked out of that class, went straight to admissions and said, hey, give my money back. And it was one of my friends working in admissions, and she was like, well, we can't give you all your money back. I was like, well, give me back what you can.
That's right.
So I went to my dad and I was like, hey, look, I want to do this. But I actually told him, I was like, I'm going to go work at Trent's if we don't do something different.
Oh, man, that was a low blow.
Yeah,
man.
it was a low blow. And, because at that time, Trent's, they were all about 6 trucks or something.
Yeah.
And I was kind of idolizing them. And so I was like, hey, I want to do this. I just don't want to be in a truck my whole life. Let's do something. And it's like, I was like, my dad was piggyback on my mom's insurance. I don't even think we had uniforms. And I was like, we need to do something better.
He did have a great reputation.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, just the Tauzin name back then.
The Tauzin name, the reputation of the actual work.
The congressman too. That was big. I still get access every day.
So were you related to Jeff?
Yeah.
That was Jeff Tauzin.
That was Billy
Tauzin.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. That was part of your relation?
Yeah, that was my dad.
So for those that don't know, back in the 80s, Billy was
Billy.
He was a big wig around, right?
Yeah, he's a big wig around. He's still pretty big wig, I guess. Cause
I never put that together. I guess I should have, but yeah.
Yeah, he owns his own lobbying business now, and he got, I think, 2 of his sons.
So that's the secret then. He just gave you a bunch of political contracts.
I guess.
No, just joking. Of course. Yeah. So you finally decide to take over the family business. You realize that's going to be challenged because you're dealing with a lot of family dynamics and your father, and you're talking about going to work for the competition, which I'm sure he was like, screw that, right? Because this is his legacy at the time. Yeah. And even even $500,000, most businesses never even make it to $500,000.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So even to go from 0 to $500,000, this was his baby. This was his, his heart and soul. And, you're coming in. And so you come in and, what were some of the biggest challenges in the early days of Growing Dogs? You first get there. First of all, you don't even get control at first, right? Like you gotta come in as a tech and work your way up. How many years did he make you like grind it out before he really started to give you some authority to make some decisions that, was able to move the bar?
It wasn't long because I guess I think he knew that he was going to lose me if he didn't let me do something. Mm-hmm.
And he knew you were talented.
And I think he felt he needed me really bad. And at the same time, he didn't want to happen to him and I would happen to his.
That makes perfect sense.
And I was the same way. And
that makes so much sense.
It was either I grow the company or we were going to split because we did not work well together. Like if we worked in the field together, it wasn't good. I probably got fired 4 or 5 times, quit just as many. And, I'll say like the next day I'm back at work or whatever, because, he had a bad temper and I kind of back then I still had a little bit of a bad temper. And, you wouldn't know that if you talked to us, but we both like way mellowed out over the years. Actually the most revenue my dad ever did was probably about $340. And,
wow.
So around 2004, he finally started letting me do things. And when I say do things, it was kind of like spend money. And back then, if we wanted education, we either had to read a book, hire a consultant, or hope nobody answered the phone when you got on the internet. So, I did a lot of internet stuff. I came across a email newsletter called Comanche Marketing. That got me involved in, at the time, Service Roundtable and later Service Nation. I learned a lot from those guys. But it's
Jeff,
just so challenging. I think just building a company in a tier 3 micro market like Thibodeau is difficult, and I think our labor pool is small, so it was just always really challenging.
But one thing you hit on, and one of the things we always want to do here at Main Street Mogul is give insight to some of the things that bring success. And I know for me personally, and you just hit on it, one of the things that helped me the most in my career was getting around other people that were doing bigger things than me. I joined a mastermind, right? I'd fly all over the country and go join masterminds with companies that were doing 10, 20 times more than me and go into a bunch of industry stuff. And it sounds like you kind of did the same thing. And you kind of do have to get out of Thibodeau, Homa, because we are in a small market. And to get out of Thibodeau, Homa and put yourself around those people, I wrote a note here because I actually listened to one of your earlier podcasts, believe it or not. And it said one of the things that really helped you, and now maybe you can elaborate on it and just talk about how being around other people really did help you to have a different perspective. But Did you work with something called Service Station Mentor?
Service Nation.
Service Nation.
Yeah.
And that was a mastermind group?
Because you had mentorship groups, and it's basically a mastermind. I would say, there was some pivotal things that really got us to growing, but I think one thing that kind of shocked me in a way was I went to at the time it was actually the year that Service Roundtable launched Service Nation, which was a best practices group, kind of like Nexstar or Airtime 500 back in the day, which I forgot to call it now. But so I went to that meeting and actually had one in New Orleans, and the guest speaker was Ken Goodrich. I don't know if you're familiar with Ken, but Ken's kind of like the industry mogul. Flies, he owns his own private jet. He sold multiple roll-ups. He recently sold Ghetto, the majority of Ghetto. And so now this is 15, 18 years ago. So I just remember, it was the CD age. So he starts talking about his business plan. At that time, he had sold a business and he was working for ARS. So he was like the operations leader, or they might have made him president. So he plugs in his CD, and his CD starts outlining a business plan that he'll take to a bank to raise capital, whatever. And I just remember it's like a narrated video or just text, and it's a woman reading off the text of the business plan, saying we're going to do $120 million at $22 million.
And that must have been at the time profit. For you unconceivable, right?
And I'm like, I just remember driving home and I was like blown away by that.
Yeah.
And I was like,
wow. What I find a lot of times that the thing that holds us back the most is the lack of belief of how much we can actually do.
Oh yeah, you limit the belief.
And when you get around these masterminds and these people that are doing whatever they are, 50 million, 100 million, not to say that you could, well, I guess you can if you, but it actually lets you start to think and believe in a bigger way. And that's kind of what the masterminds do.
It's such a big deal because and I think that shocked me because I was always looking at, I had the trade magazines and, you see like bigger companies in there. And you always kind of throw it off like, well, are they in Denver or are they in Atlanta?
Right, the bigger markets.
They should have a bigger company. And then, to hear the professionalism and I guess just the details in that business plan and the thinking outside the box of putting on a CD with a woman narrating, and I'm like,
just the professionalism in general.
Yeah, it's just like blown away. Wow. So I got home and I just kind of do what I do, started doing more research and like how can I?
I bet you were obsessive in that research too.
Well, I have a very obsessive personality. So
most people that I've met that had success are obsessive in what they do, at least for a season.
I'm highly competitive too, so I got to be really careful because I make everything a competition. So just to give you an idea, when we did the we did an executive profile test at AirPro. So it's like 50 of us or more took this test.
Like the personality test thing.
Yeah. So the founder calls me up. He's like, "Hey man, there's one person in the company that scored higher and competitive than me." Like, who, me? He's like, yeah. I'm like,
well, there's nothing wrong with being competitive. No, you were in a competitive industry.
Yeah, and if I don't,
how many AC companies do they have in town? At least 8, 9, right?
And I'll make, look, I still remember. There's another pivotal moment. I'll mention it. Maybe you'll watch the podcast, but it's kind of crazy. So, I was, I used to be married to Chrissy Claymore. She's still Chrissy Tauzin. And
I know Chrissy.
She actually worked for Nick Edgington's wife at Dr. Falgo's office, and they would have a Christmas party every year. So we go to the Christmas party, and at that time, I was, I think it was around 05, 06. So it was like 04, 05 when my dad first started letting me do things. So we kind of just started growing. Like 05, I had wrapped a vehicle. So we just kind of, getting into that thing. So
I heard that you literally had to go to your dad and be like, give me the credit card. We're going to wrap a vehicle. And he was kind of like.
No, he didn't have a work. And so Nick takes us in in his garage for the Christmas party, and he got a Ferrari in there. I think it was a Ferrari.
Go ahead, Nick.
Like an older model Ferrari.
Yeah.
And he passed he was picking at me, and I say I took it personal, but he shouldn't have told me that. So he goes, he said, man, if I knew that y'all in the AC business, I should have got y'all. I heard y'all were cheap. And
really?
And he should have never told me that. That was a mistake he made. So, like, and I just took it, but I went home. I was like, all right,
yeah,
like, I'm gonna beat you, bro. And that was it. That's all I needed.
Well, I think you did.
So that's all I did. So and that's how I took it. I'm like, okay, they got 6 trucks. I'm at 12, and that's all I did.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah. Sometimes though, you do have to. I know you can get so
I've
caught
actually
up.
never told that story to anybody other than like my personal friends.
Really? Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing it. You can get caught up so much on the growth of things, right? And just super focused on having more trucks and having more business. But what really matters at the end of the day is that bottom line, and that's what they say. Let me get it right. They say that revenue is for vanity and profit is for sanity.
So I would say I did everything wrong in business. So, I have a lot I can offer and, to teach people and help people not make the mistakes I made. But
you ever thought, did you ever do any consulting or
I do consulting.
That's awesome.
I would say if I had to go back and do it all over again, revenue is almost like a drug. And that's what happened.
I've heard it explained that way.
That's what happened to me. And like I said, I have an obsessive personality. So revenue is like a drug. And I was always like, okay, if we put in 10% on the bottom line, I'm going to do this. We're going to add 500 grand in revenue and 10% is going to go to the bottom. It never worked that way. Usually I'd wash profit, get into a cash flow crunch, have to climb out of it. And it was just a constant cycle I was going through.
Did you ever fall into this way of thinking that the bigger you get, the easier it'll get? Did you ever think that?
I did think that, but actually it did happen. Okay. So there's some truth to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you found like the bigger you got, the easier it got?
At a certain point, yes.
Okay.
When I guess I was at like 3.5 million, and today's dollars, that's probably equivalent to like 4 point something.
Sure.
I would say that was probably my most difficult time because I was wearing so many hats. And I was in the GM role myself, and I don't like being a general manager.
I get it. Yeah. Well, that brings me to my next question, man. So just to backtrack, I mean, this is an amazing story, right? You come out of college, you join the family business, you finally get some control. Was there a moment where you realized the business had truly taken off, where you just, because I know you can get in the grind sometimes where you're making all this progress and you don't even stick your head up long enough to realize, was there a moment where you were like, man, I really got something here, we're making some momentum, and you actually took the time to acknowledge it?
I think just when the public started noticing and, the phone starts ringing off the hook and you got to keep hiring people. And I think that's when, when the public starts to vote that you're the company, you did something.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. That's right. I always like to say that we don't have any boss, but every single customer is a boss. And that's the one that can fire you, right?
Yeah, the only customers that matter, your internal ones and external ones.
That's right. That's right, man. So great, man. I know at Doug's that y'all added a lot of different services beyond HVAC. I know HVAC was your core, and that's what you got built. But over the years, you ended up adding plumbing and electrical work. And I know that's very common now. You're seeing that a lot, but also kissing it and keeping it simple. Yeah. There's a lot of ways to streamline profit in a business.
Sure.
Did you ever have any regrets in doing all the service diversification, or did that really work out? Because I've seen it work out really well for some people.
Yeah.
And I've seen some people try it and, man, really, really struggle with it. Yeah. Seems like you did.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I don't have any regrets because everything was a great learning experience. And that is a new trend.
Like everybody. But when you did it, it wasn't.
No, and I was, obviously I was the first in the
You were the first,
really the first in the home market. And I would say it looks sexy from the outside, but every time you add a vertical like that, you're just going to add a complication. And I would say you don't need to do any of that to increase profitability. And if you want to increase profitability, you need to be concentrated.
Right.
But
boy, sure, it's fun to do new stuff, isn't it, Jeff?
It is. And it's just like one of those things. I think if I had to do it again, I would make sure I would start off what I know good, which is residential HVAC and replacement, service and replacement. And I make sure that's doing 50%, net profit.
There you go.
Not EBITDA, net profit.
Net profit,
and, before I add any other vertical. And if I would add another vertical, I'd make sure I bring in, and I had enough capital on the side where I can put a plumbing champion or an electrical champion so they can own it. It just takes so much time away from what you do well when you try to add a new vertical.
Got it.
It's just
so what I'm hearing you say is no regret. It worked out. It put a few of those gray hairs in your hair.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about leadership and team building, Jeff, because you ended up building a large team. Over the years, I got the opportunity to meet some of your employees. They were always professional, always cordial. So what was your approach to building a high-performing team?
I always call it, you got to beat the dead horse.
Beat the dead horse?
Beat the dead horse.
Let me write that down.
When you bring your kids through the cashier line at a grocery store, you got to tell them no multiple times for the candy, right? So that's how you got to treat your team. So you got to train them over and over again. Repeatedly training.
So it's not like come in and say, "Hey, do this," and walk away and expect that's going to happen.
No, man, you gotta make a huge commitment to training with commitment. It's a big deal, and there's so many companies that. But say, hey,
you pulled it off.
Yeah, I was.
So did you like?
I didn't care how busy we were, or what we had going on. We training, and it was multiple days a week.
So did you have training built into your regular schedule weekly all the time?
Yeah,
and some of the training was repetitive in nature. It was some of the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh wow!
And typically, what we do is I have like these 1 week kind of refresher courses in the slow season where I bring in like all the service techs or something like that. Okay. And I would personally do a lot of the training in those cases. Yeah. And that's probably my biggest passion is training and coaching. So I was always kind of a part of the training.
I love that, Jeff. I love that. So that brings me to my next question. And how do you keep your team motivated, especially in the middle of summer when it's hot? The type of work that you've done is not easy work. This is physical, hard work, right?
Well, sometimes people are just going to get frustrated. And I say it's difficult in the HVAC space. You just got to be flexible and like, hey, if they need off, let them off. I wasn't really a stickler with that stuff. Like I wasn't.
If they need off, you let them off?
Yeah, I just let them off.
What if it's the middle of summer and you got 6 installs backed up and this is your top guy?
I let them off.
You let them off?
I wouldn't let them because it's either that or they're gonna quit. Yeah, because they'll just go work somewhere else.
Yeah. The HVAC industry is just super competitive.
Oh yeah, I kind of joke.
Was it common to cycle employees around companies a little bit?
Yeah. Your A players will have a job same day. Your B players next day. You C players by the end of the week.
Right. Right. All you want's A players anyway, though, right?
Well, at least A and B. You could probably you could probably turn a B into an A, but I don't know what you could do with a C. So.
Very good, man.
And then you can get some stuff. C's, unfortunately.
You will. Okay. So just your personal connection and your coaching help to keep them motivated by being personally involved.
Yeah, and it just gets stressful. Okay. And I think I took kind of an approach where I was pretty laid back, and I kind of, especially at the end where I ain't gonna lie to you, I let my general manager be the bad guy because I got tired.
Kind of did the good cop, bad cop thing.
Yeah, I got tired of being the bad guy, so I just didn't like playing that role anymore.
I understand that.
So I was just like, hey, I'm just gonna be the guy that, hey, I'm your buddy. I'll talk to you, help you out. Now if they would come around me and try and talk. Behind the general manager's back, I'll say, what would the GM say? You go to
You'd re-support your GM.
Yeah, definitely. Always. Okay.
Yeah. Good deal, man. Mm. What were some leadership lessons you learned the hard way that you still remember that you didn't forget?
I guess that you're going to be wrong a lot. Just be prepared you're going to be wrong a lot. I guess, too, as a leader, you need to be prepared to pivot quickly when you are wrong. Like, when you're wrong, don't hold on to it and keep going just because it's your decision. Like, you got to be able to let the decision go and admit you're wrong and move on.
So would you say moving as a leader, one of the lessons you learned was that you move fast. If you make a mistake, you own it, fix it quickly, and then move towards the goal and try to get to the right answer.
Move to the goal.
And don't be humble.
Yeah, be humble and bring your team in and see what they say. Hear their opinion. Ultimately,
I think that's a leadership lesson that really is learned the hard way. That a lot of people that don't always learn, Jeff. I know that seems simple, but that's actually really deep, and that's a real lesson.
Yeah. As leaders, we typically high D profile on the disc profile, which I am, and I'm a red in a color code test, and it's just like to say you're wrong.
So I'm familiar with the stuff you're talking about, but for some people that aren't, just to kind of show what kind of operation you were running, very professional operation. So what they were doing in their organization is they were running profile tests. Red is another psych test, and they actually would, and I'm familiar with this. I know not everybody is, so that's why I'm kind of explaining it.
Yeah.
They would actually get to know the psychological profile of different employees to place them in the best place for them to have the best opportunity to grow, and allow them to know how to manage each employee based on different psychological profiles.
Yeah.
Not something very many companies are doing.
Yeah.
So it just speaks to the lengths you were going in your professionalism and how serious y'all were about the company.
Yeah, part of our hiring process before we hired you is required that you took, especially for technicians, you took a specific technician aptitude test and a disc profile test.
Wow. Yeah. Would you always hire based on the test?
The test
was it more just like
the way we used the test was, if you want to take the next step in the hiring process, take the test.
Got it.
So it wasn't a pass or fail. It was just basically, hey, they took the test, they want to take the next step. So then, usually, even if they did poorly on a test, it doesn't mean we want to hire them. So we bring them in, interview them, see where they were, and usually make an offer.
Got it. Did y'all ever have to do any hiring bonuses to do any recruiting and get people in?
Yeah, I use hiring bonus. That's how I got my first master plumber, hiring bonus.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
I think hiring bonuses can work well too, because it'll at least get somebody kind of concrete in for a little while, for a year or two, however you do the payouts.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of companies are going to use hiring bonus, and it'll help. Somebody's moving from another city, or even if they're making a job jump.
Would you actually financially help them move sometimes if they were the right talent and could make a huge impact?
Definitely, yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. So you were committed, man. You were in.
Oh yeah. The highest bonus I paid was $10,000 for a master plumber. Yeah.
You're hiring?
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know how to plumb, but I
don't know if you're familiar with the plumbing license in Louisiana.
No.
But you basically have to. It can take easily 8 years, 8 to 12 years to get a master plumber.
So it's worth the $10,000 to get them in.
Yeah, definitely.
Get it. So HVAC and plumbing can be seasonal. Am I right in that, or am I wrong in that?
Not so much plumbing, but plumbing tends to pick up kind of like in the winter.
Okay.
When the
busted pipes and such.
Yeah, you got obviously freeze, and then the water heaters work harder, and also the fats in the drains solidify and cause more drain clogs.
Okay. So was it more seasonal with the HVAC? Like when it would be cold in the winter, you wouldn't do as much HVAC?
Yeah, HVAC was.
So is that why you kind of diversified to keep your team busy throughout the whole year, or was you able to keep the team busy through the whole year? How many employees did y'all have total?
I think at the end when I sold, we probably had about 24.
24, maybe. Wow.
And
so was it hard to keep them busy year round, or y'all pretty much had a system that was clocking?
Yeah, usually around October, November, either you have a couple that maybe quit, and then you let people go.
Would you have to lay off sometimes in the winter?
Yeah,
man, that sucks, huh?
Yeah, it sucks, but I mean, it's just kind of, it's a good way to, I ain't gonna lie to you, a lot of times when you do that correctly, it's gonna uplift your team, and it's gonna get you in a consistency of making sure you always have good people. I would say, and I say this through experience, hiring the right person is not going to move your company that forward. But boy, firing the right person will. Because, man, you get rid of that anchor, and you're just going to start moving forward.
That's wisdom, Jeff.
I guarantee you.
That's a lesson I know you learned the real hard way.
Oh, yeah. I guarantee you, if you leave that anchor in your company, it's going to slow you down more than hard.
Have you ever kept the wrong person on for too long?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think everybody goes through that that's in business, man. So this next question, I really am excited to ask because I think this is something at Doug's that you did a lot of, or at least my perspective. Mm-hmm. So how did you use technology and automation to stay competitive? And how do you see AI in the future impacting your industry?
So, I'm huge into technology. So I was always researching what's new, what can I use?
Yes. I think you said you were one of the very first, if not the first, to get on ServiceTitan, right?
Yeah. So I adopted ServiceTitan in 2015, which I was definitely the first in our market. And at the time, I want to say ServiceTitan had 8 employees, and they probably have 800.
Yeah, they're huge now.
Yeah. So early adopted ServiceTitan, and but even before that, I was already using ESC, so all the technicians were on tablets even before I had ServiceTitan. So I was on a mobile platform well before anybody was even thinking about it in this market, so
being an early adapter to technology gave you a huge competitive edge.
Yeah, I don't know if it gave us a huge competitive edge, but what ServiceTitan did was the mobile application was faster, the dispatching process was a lot smoother, and what it did do, it allowed you to operate with less office staff with the same efficiency.
Right.
If you had
which would add profit right to the bottom line.
Yeah. Now that's assuming you set up the software correctly. But I did all the integration myself. So I would come home and spend hours on my laptop till 10, 11 o'clock.
Back to being obsessive. You was on it.
Yeah, so I was on it. So, and like I said, I was at one time, during the ServiceTitan scoring system, the early scoring system, I was consistently in the top 10 of power users.
Dang.
Yeah, I had one time, the highest I ever got was number 2.
Golly, man.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So this next question, I think you already answered it, but Doug's over the years has probably become the premier AC company in the area. It has a strong local reputation. Is there a secret to maintaining that excellent customer service?
I think just keep it simple. Do what you say you're going to do.
Do what you say and say what you do.
And you're going to mess up. So when you mess up, fix it. I mean, either you got to go in and fix it or you refund the customer. As simple as that. Don't overcomplicate it.
And how many companies just don't do that simple thing, right?
A lot of bad reviews come from just poor communication.
That's right.
That's it. It's not because, at one time, I say at one time, probably since the inception of the review game, I'm the one that always responds to all the reviews, me personally. So, I'd read through every one of them. So we get a 1-star.
So you got 24 employees. You're running a whole huge company, and you're personally responding to every negative review?
To all reviews, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the one thing I did. Now, as far as like direct customer complaints, I had it to where the customer service people knew, do not contact me for any basic customer complaints.
Got it.
Like it better be the sky's falling and we got to refund $10,000, and all you need is approval. Right. So,
and you kind of had to put that moat around you for your own sanity at some point.
Yeah. And then the GM I had, she was excellent, and she took, she let a lot of things roll to her, and she took care of it. So I didn't have to worry about that.
That's awesome, man. Having the right GM makes a huge difference. Did you use any technology that really helped you get, because you had a lot of 5-star reviews, some of the most in the area. Did you have a technology platform, and what allowed you? Was it technology along with the excellent customer service that really boosted all those reviews? Yeah. So, man, I did a lot of unique things that We're not giving away any secrets here. No. I use ServiceTitan in a way that a lot of people don't. And did it automatically push out for reviews, ServiceTitan? I did, but I also had it integrated with Podium for a while. Mm-hmm. So, and then I used. I also used another company called Chirp. So, man, you were really intentional on getting those reviews. Yeah, I mean, like literally, it was the customer would, like every little communication we did, say, "Hey, please leave us a review," or "Please leave us a review."
But the best thing is to have a basic script for your technician that personalizes the ask. In other words, you're not saying, "Hey, can you leave my company review?" You're saying, "Hey, Miss Jones, can you leave me a review and let me know how well of a job I did for you?" So when you personalize it and you ask face to face, they're way more likely to leave a review for you. Yeah,
that's good.
So, and then after that, you're gonna, I would text them and email them.
Good.
Just like in the dispatch notification, appointment reminder, like, "Hey, just please leave a review." And so just that way, they're constantly reminded. So,
that's good, man.
Yeah,
that's good stuff.
I don't know. I mean, I think.
Do you ever feel like it was too much communication? You ever get any blowback from people saying it was over communication?
Yeah, you do, but I don't believe in that.
I don't believe in that either.
You got right. So
I think the more you communicate, the better.
Yeah, what you get 5. I'd always tell the girls in the office, okay, you get one person to say, stop emailing me or I'm gonna sue you. Okay, you got one email. We just sent out 5,000 emails. Don't worry about it.
That's right. That's right. Kind of the 80-20 rule there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
And I always say too, when you get a response like that via text message, and pay attention to this, you don't know what that individual's going through at that time. They could just be upset about something and they taking it out on you through a text message or an email. Just let it go and move on.
That's good.
You gotta have multiple touches of communication.
It's a perfect segue into my next question, actually, Jeff. Yeah. How would you handle an unhappy customer or negative reviews?
Well, I didn't really have to handle a whole lot personally, but I will say that the best thing you can do is respond quickly. And if I would say if you get a 1-star review, most of them are poor communication by somebody on your team. So it means that person needs to be trained better. Mm-hmm. It could be a price sensitive item that they complain about. They want to look up, hey, well, this part only costs $10. You charge me $200. And once again, that's training because we don't sell parts, we sell services. And so it always goes back to training. And then, the worst 1-star reviews are the ones when they leave like 2 and 3 paragraphs and they really think it out. Then those are the ones where, well, you're going to have to respond to the review and reach out by phone and see maybe they can at least correct it to, a 4-star, 3-star, or maybe you can get them to take it down. But
did you ever pay a customer to take down a 1-star review?
I've never paid any. I didn't believe in that. No, I didn't. I just didn't believe in that.
Okay.
I personally wanted a certain amount of 1-star reviews. Like I didn't want to have a 5.
So be realistic.
Yeah, I did not want to have, and we had 5.
Because you're not going to service thousands of customers and not get at least some 1-star reviews.
Yeah.
What's the old saying? You can please most of the people most of the time, but not all the people all of the time.
And look, I use reviews to gauge our pricing too.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because I wanted to, I'm probably, not say the opposite, but I always wanted to push the pricing threshold.
Yeah.
So I wanted to
talk about it.
I wanted to sell.
Doug's was known for quality.
Yeah.
And service.
Yeah.
And reputation. They were never known to be the cheapest.
Correct. Right. And I saw you pulled up on a BMW. You paid $100,000 for the car. You get the same place.
You're telling on me right now, Jeff.
I'm just saying. So it's kind of the same approach. Your brand is going to help you command price. And then you deliver on your promises, and then you're going to mess up, and you make sure you correct the problem. That's all you can do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would use reviews to gauge our pricing to make sure that I was getting some pricing complaints in the reviews, to be honest with you. Because, I would tell my salespeople, if somebody's not complaining about price, we're not pressing the threshold enough.
Right.
We need to press
also, if and this is and we're very different industries.
Yeah.
I never want to be the most expensive,
right,
but I don't want to be the cheapest because what I do want and what's most important to me is having the best people show up at somebody's house to do the best job. And there's no way you can be the cheapest company and have the best person show up to do the best quality type of job.
Right.
And I think that you have to choose either you're going to have quality people doing quality work, which being the cheapest person, and those two things do not go together. And different people choose different business models, and that's to each their own. But I can guarantee you that if somebody's the cheapest, you're not getting the best person showing up to your house.
That's usually highly accurate.
So,
and then the only other way you can make money in that model is high volume. So any employees are going to be,
running ragged,
tired and running ragged.
and not making enough to make a living. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
But anyway, so vision and mindset, Jeff. What's your personal philosophy on business and life?
It's probably not going to be what you think, but business wise, I always look at it as, this is the game I have to play to be able to do the things I want. And to be honest with you, it wasn't really.
It's a good answer.
Yeah, it's like, I know, honestly, I'd rather not own a business or work, but I'm like, okay, this was laid out.
You do want to own a dirt bike track.
Well, yeah, to a degree.
Which he does, by the way.
Yeah. So but I look at it, I'm like, okay, I can be a W-2 employee, or I could have a business. And so I'd rather be a business owner because I have all these benefits. And then, I just like taking more, I'm like taking risks. So it just kind of fit my profile better. But yeah, to say, going around and, building a big business wasn't really, I say hugely important to me. It's just being competitive is what drove it in me.
I get it.
More important to me would be, being a good dad, a good husband, a good son, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy when you focus on those things, though, how your business also can thrive when you're focusing on doing the right things and basically focus on being on the best person you can be by being a good father.
Yeah.
A lot of times those businesses can grab you up and stop you from being the best father or husband. So that's a real balance you have to walk.
It is, yeah. And like I said, I have that obsessive personality. So when I got married a second time, I vouched and hey, I can't let this business all encompass me. Because in my first marriage, I did kind of let it do that because I was at that stage where I was still putting in a ton of time, and it was intoxicating. And so it was I was on a cocaine high basically. So I just wanted more of it, and then so I was so dedicated, and I was like, man, I gotta be able to somewhat make sure I'm dedicating time to my wife, my family. And so that's kind of when I got remarried. I was like, hey, and I did a much better job at business too. It's funny. Of course, I knew a lot more at that point.
Yeah,
too.
You were a little older and you had a little more wisdom.
Went through enough crap,
So
yeah.
So how did you stay focused on your vision when others might not see it or understand it? Because when you came in and started making changes and laid out this vision to be a $5-6 million company, I'm sure not everybody was like, yeah, of course. Let's.
Yeah, well, I would say, I couldn't take everybody with me.
You lost some friends along the way?
I don't know if I lost friends, but I had to fire some people that were really good people. And I had such a weird dynamic. And so obviously my dad started a company. But my dad never, he looked at it as his idea of a business was kind of like
lifestyle business.
Well, I don't know, lifestyle business, more of a means not to pay taxes, and more of a business owner is working in a service truck. And so that's what he did.
He had a really good paying job is what he had, right?
He was just a service technician. I could never get him to do anything else. But he never wanted to fire anybody. And so it's his name's on the trucks.
Me and your dad could be friends, buddy.
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot along the way too.
His name's on the trucks, and he had a lot of loyalty in the company.
Sure.
Even though he didn't hire anybody. So, and that kind of made it difficult for me to do things because people were well, I work for your dad. I'm like, well, I hired you. And so, we did everything from commercial work to residential new construction. So, when I decided to shut those divisions down,
got a lot of backlash.
One of my best friends, Jake Roderick, he ended up leaving the company. I shut his divisions down because they weren't profitable. But
hard decisions.
We still good friends today. And but yeah, I had a lot of employees that were in those divisions that we either let go or they quit, and because I couldn't, they didn't want to do residential work, and it was just, we made so many changes and tried so many things over the years there's no way I could have took the whole group of employees with me, because they just, a few of them stayed, some of them, some of them are still there. I've been there probably 15 years now, but, it was just, I made so many changes, tried so many things. And I'll be honest with you, I had a fear in me early on that I'm in this small market, I have to do new construction, because if I tell them no, then they're not gonna let me do their office. Or if I tell them no to their office, they're not gonna let me do their house. Because Thibodeau's so like small knit community,
You don't
and that's
say,
just
Jeff.
how I thought. And I was like, man, if I don't do this, I'm just gonna be a $2.5 million company. And so it was a fear that, well, I got to do everything, because I don't want to piss off Mike, because Mike owns a contracting business. Then Mike also owns 10 rentals, and he also owns this, and I'm gonna lose all that business. And so,
but in hindsight, was that a limiting belief?
Yeah, because so we were doing about 1.2 million in commercial work. Shut it down, and the business only dropped about 600 in revenue the next year, because we picked it up and the stuff we did well, and of course we became more profitable. Then the next thing was we were in Home Depot and Lowe's. We got out of that, stopped doing that. And then there's a couple other things we were doing that we just stopped doing all that. We just basically went to residential service for generators, and we also had bought a company in New Orleans that did primary ice machines. Stopped doing all that. Stopped going to New Orleans as much. So when we stopped doing all that, the business started taking off again. And also too, we had COVID money come in, so that helped too. But
so it sounds like you made some decisions that wasn't very popular.
Yeah,
that were very difficult.
Difficult decisions.
That if it wouldn't have worked, you'd have got a lot of slack. But you ended up looking like the hero.
Yeah, and I'll say
you got it right.
Yeah.
You called it right.
And if some of the former employees watch this, I'll say too, I hired a guy as a consultant and ended up putting him on as an employee, and I ended up kind of using him as a hatchet man too.
Got it.
Because I had to make a lot of difficult decisions, and he kind of made them for me. He kind of fired a lot of people, but I think a few of the employees probably could have made it. Some of them quit. Some of them we actually hired back. But yeah, I learned a lot from him, and he did help change the dynamic of the company. And so it was kind of a catapult that got me to
when you're a leader, man, hindsight's 20/20, and you had to make a lot of difficult decisions all the time. But at the end of the day, the proof's in the pudding.
Yeah, and when you're a leader, you have to be prepared that people can sit in the cheap seats and talk about you, and
it's like the man in the arena.
Yeah, it just is what it is. And like over the years, I would say over the years, I just kind of gradually took more and more that stoicism approach where I just didn't show any emotion. I think I had one employee over the last probably 18 years that I kind of got into it with, that I actually cursed at. He's still a good friend of mine, and I think we were both crying then. But that was probably the only instance that I really got kind of like tone with an employee. So I just kind of kept real calm and never showed my emotions. And
got it.
And really nothing bothered me anyway. I'd been through so much. I was just like, nothing really bothers me.
And that's what happens after a while, right? You go through so many things.
So
did you ever just wake up and not be like, am I going to have a problem today? But how many problems am I going to have to solve today?
Well, I got good at hiding problems. I will tell you that. So, just kind of share some of the stuff that a lot of people don't know. Whenever my wife and I got together, I was coming off a divorce. But when I was going through the divorce, by all means, I didn't want to go through a divorce, because like I believe you don't get a divorce. And so I remember bringing in Jake and my dad. I'm like, hey, look, I got to the company where it is now. I really need y'all help. I got to work on my marriage. So I literally took, like 9 months. Like I'd leave work at 1 o'clock. I don't know what I was doing. I was going free my mind, trying to work on my marriage. And
That's real, man.
The whole time, the financial aspect of the company was like, cash flow is terrible. We're getting a financial bind. I had a decent sized line of credit, and I had like 10 grand left on it. I was like, holy moly, like how am I hit payroll? It got pretty bad, and I kept all that pretty secret. I learned a lot about cash.
Carrying that weight.
So when her and I got together, I was just starting to kind of like, hey, I gotta get back in this thing, get this thing fixed. And I was operating a company on like 3 credit cards, a line of credit. I was calling vendors saying, hey, give me more.
This is the stuff people don't know, right? This is the real stuff.
I was calling vendors saying, hey, I need more time to pay you. I'm gonna pay you. I've always paid you. And then, just kind of really got back into it, corrected the things I needed to, and it just started paying everybody off, man.
Wow, man, what a story. Thank you for sharing that. It was
scary for a while. I ain't gonna lie to you. You can ask my wife. I still remember, because I was like, literally, there was a couple of nights I was crying.
I believe it.
It was bad.
But at the end of the day, you ended up ultimately successful.
Yeah,
so congratulations.
It was crazy. It was really bad. And I'd go to work every day like nothing was wrong.
Yeah, sometimes that's what you have to do, man.
Yeah, it was crazy.
God, man. Were there people along the way that doubted your path? Anybody close to you that doubted your path as you was doing
Not
it?
that I know of.
Okay.
Just give a shout out to my dad, because, man, my dad never wanted to build a company like I did, but he always supported me. He was like,
and that was important.
Oh yeah,
that was important.
I was another little quick thing, man. When I went through my divorce, I slept in my office for about a week.
God, man.
I mean, I had a nice office though. I had a bathroom and everything. So
okay, you wasn't slumming it too bad.
No, not too bad.
Okay.
So I remember I had the motocross track thing was fairly new. That thing was bleeding money, and I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I remember texting my dad like, bro, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I was literally sleeping on the floor in my office, and he texted me back saying, you can make it work. And
that little bit meant all the world to you.
I still remember. I was like, he caught me off guard, and I went to sleep that night. And like the next day, I was like, I'm gonna make this shit work.
I love it. So one of the things I try to do here at Main Street Mogul, Jeff, is inspire people to do their own path and step out, which can be scary. Yeah. So what advice would you give to someone just starting a home service business today in 2025?
Focus on concentration.
Don't do it?
No,
just joking.
No, yeah. I would say focus on concentration. Focus on surrounding yourself with great people.
Okay.
Because, it's just so much easier if you got good people with you. You can't.
I always like to say that the company is the people.
Yeah, there's no way I could have. We talking about I, but it was always we.
That's right.
At the end, I mean, really, it was the team did everything. I was just along for the ride.
That's right. That's right.
So it's really the team you put around you, and it's important that as you grow, you increase your core team.
Your A player, so to speak.
Yeah, your core. Mm-hmm. I always go back and I look at the New England Patriots, because if you go and study the New England Patriots in their dynasty time, they only had a group of about 6 people that were there the whole time. Crazy. Yeah. But they built a badass dynasty, right?
They did have Tom Brady, though.
They had Tom Brady, the coach. And,
yeah.
But in that period, they were able to do that by just keeping a solid core.
You're right.
And then they moved the other players in that they needed at the time.
I've heard stories of people, having a core team like that.
Yeah.
And then moving on and taking that same core team and continuing to have success in multiple ventures over and over, and having that same core, right? Yeah. So that's an interesting concept.
I think another thing too is don't get overly obsessed and enticed by technology. I think that's what
I think that's advice right now with AI is probably more relevant. Don't get caught up in it.
Yeah, because that's one thing I go through today with people is like, okay, tell me what you're doing right now. I'm like, do you have a documented process? No. Well, how do you think so technology is a magnifier. So it's either going to magnify you positively or negatively. And so if you don't have everything documented, not operating well, adding technology is not going to be your savior. It can actually make things worse. especially something robust like a CRM that takes a long time to set up, it's just going to add a headache.
And how many times people do that? They're struggling, and instead of just working through it, I'll just change a CRM or I'll change a process, right?
Always.
If you can go back, Jeff, and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Focus on concentration. Do what you do well and do it over and over again. Keep refining it.
Simple and short. I love it. We'll just stick with that right there. That's some profound advice. How do you balance risk taking with sustainability in a small business? And I know you're a risk taker, so how did you kind of balance that?
I think this is like an old school approach, but I guess I kind of took like what you would call the stairway approach, where I have 1 year where I drop the hammer, and I have another year where I say I kind of tone it down and recoup cash flow, cash reserves, so the next year. So I kind of like, hey, year 1, I'm dropping the hammer, and I'm not super worried about.
When you say drop the hammer, you mean full speed ahead? We're in growth mode,
taking
growth at all costs.
Growth at all costs. Year 2, I'm gonna scale it back, make sure I can get some cash.
Pull some profit.
Year 3, I'm gonna go all out. Again. Yeah.
And so you would just kind of rotate that.
Yeah, I kind of rotate that, and then I say another big risk I was always into was when, as soon as I would get news or the macroeconomics would be, hey, we're getting an economic pullback and there's a lot of fear in the market, that's when I would double down. Yeah.
You would do the opposite of what other people were doing.
Yeah, definitely. Always.
That's smart.
Yeah.
That was smart.
Yeah.
Wow, man. Mm-hmm. Legacy and looking forward. What are you most proud of when you look at what Doug's has become today?
I guess just being able to build, that size company in such a small market,
Yeah. And in the amount of time that you did it too.
Yeah. And I guess.
What was the final so 18 years, right? Is how long you were involved.
Yeah. I was
what was and I know this is for Vandy, but what was the top line revenue at the peak?
At the peak, the last year I was really involved was like right below 7.1 million. Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations, man. That's amazing.
And then, we had those COVID years. So each, like we went 5, then 6, then 7. We grew $1 million every year.
Wow.
Like from 2020. And that was just strictly residential. We got out of all the, commercial.
Right. And residential was the more profitable part of that sector.
Yeah, because you get paid the same day. Yeah.
Love it.
I mean, like when I sold, our receivables was $30,000.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's incredible. That's unheard of, actually. Yeah, so what's next for you in the company? Any big goals for the future?
Right now, I'm, I'm actually still employed by the company that I sold to. Okay. And I'm going to be working with a friend of mine.
You ultimately did sell Doug's to private equity, and that was a positive experience overall for you?
Yeah, I think it was a positive experience, although, I'm not going to get the fairy tale ending like I wanted, but I think it was a positive experience. I'm still, in a way, I'm glad I sold just because I was, I could have kept the business. It was running so smooth. I was making good money. The profitability was increasing. In a way, sometimes I wish I had kept the business, but I'm glad I sold it because I was just ready for the next step.
I understand.
And in all honesty, too, my dad's name was on the trucks, and I was just kind of like, I'm tired of seeing my dad's name on the trucks. Like, I want to do my own thing.
Got it.
And
so what's next for you, man?
Well, this thing I'm doing with my friends, we're probably going to do a little buying group. So we're going to probably do, try and build like a little platform. So
I love that.
We'll probably do some.
How exciting.
Do some acquisitions, and we're going to take our time, do it slow. We're not going to try and do anything too fast, but, we're a group of experienced operators and former business owners and GMs. So, we got a lot of experience.
Dude, I wish you the best in that. That sounds exciting. So how do you want to be remembered as a business leader and as a person?
I think as a business leader, just somebody that, ultimately my goal is to help people make more money than I ever made before, to be honest.
Yes,
I was like, if you were making 80 grand with what you did before, I want you to make 120 with me. That's kind of like, I wanted to help people make more money.
You were more focused on helping people than actually helping them have a better future than actually.
There was a couple of years where I paid people more than I made, at least W-2 wise. And then, and so I just wanted to be remembered as somebody that trained people well and helped people, kind of get, always kind of like that, I can't think of his name right now, but, help people get what they want. You'll get what
Zig
you want.
Ziglar?
Zig Ziglar, yeah. So I always
Help enough other people get what
I
they
love
want.
that
Get what you
quote,
want.
and
Yeah.
I was big.
That's one of my main things.
I think I saw you post it on your Facebook. Yeah. So it's one of my main things too. I love Zig Ziglar.
Yeah.
And, definitely in personal, like I was telling you before, be a good dad, a good son, good husband.
All right. Are you doing any consulting right now, or do you?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to do any more consulting?
I'll probably do some more, yeah.
So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to get in touch with you?
They can email me at jeffdtauzin@gmail.com. I'm also on X. The same thing at Jeff D. Tauzin.
Okay.
And so, reach out to me.
Well, Jeff, this has been great. I can't thank you enough for this. This has been amazing. Yeah. Do you have anything else you'd like to add in closing before we wrap up this evening?
I would say, business is tough. I would say, always nowadays you have access to so much information. So, go out there, educate yourself, and take massive action. And I'll say, no matter what business you're in, urgency and speed is your best friend, because people always pay for that. Everybody wants everything now. And if you can deliver that, you can always charge a premium.
My friend, that is good, solid advice.
Appreciate it.
Well, guys, this has been another episode of Main Street Mogul with my good friend, Jeff Tauzin. If y'all like to get in touch with me, it's bugbossing@gmail.com or jarrettthepestguy@gmail.com. If y'all have any questions at all, as always, love you guys. Have a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you.